The celestial dominion's throne world hung in the void like a jeweled dagger, sharp, gleaming, and utterly convinced of its own magnificence. Its crystalline spires speared upward through layers of iridescent atmosphere, each one a monument to the Vexari's unshakable belief in their supremacy. From orbit, the planet resembled a chessboard, its surface divided into perfect geometric sectors, each governed with the same ruthless precision the Dominion applied to everything. At the heart of it all, in the Grand Strategium's echoing amphitheater, High Archon Zha'reth the Unbroken surveyed his domain. His 4 obsidian eyes reflected the holographic displays flickering around him, star maps, battle simulations, and the latest missive from the so-called lesser species groveling for his favor. His mandibles twitched in amusement. Pathetic. His council, tacticians, warlords, and philosophers nodded in unison, their exoskeletons clicking in approval. The tournament will proceed as planned. Let them come, let them lose. The tournament of Zha'reth was more than a game. It was the cornerstone of Dominion ideology, the proof that only those who mastered absolute control deserved to rule. For millennia, the Vexari had crushed civilizations not just with fleets, but with the cold, elegant logic of their strategies. And now, they would humiliate the newest additions to their empire in front of the entire galaxy. On Earth, the invitation arrived as a shimmering data crystal, delivered by a Vexari envoy who looked at the planet's sprawling cities like a gourmand, inspecting a plate of questionable street food. The message was simple: send your finest strategist. Let them prove humanity's worth. The United Earth Directorate panicked. They had no Zha'reth players. They barely understood the rules, but they knew the stakes, lose, and Earth would be cataloged as just another vassal state, its fate decided by alien grandmasters who saw them as insects. Elara Voss. Elara was halfway through a bottle of cheap sake when they found her, her apartment cluttered with go boards, half-finished equations, and the lingering bitterness of a career cut short. Once, she'd been Earth's top exostrategist until her unconventional tactics got her entire battalion wiped out in the Martian Secession War. Now, she played Go against an AI shed programmed to insult her in 7 languages. "You want me to what?" she slurred, squinting at the Directorate officials crowding her doorway. "Represent humanity," said Admiral Rykov, his jaw tight. "The Vexari play Zha'reth like we play chess, only worse. They think in straight lines. You don't." Elara barked a laugh. "So you need the disgraced lunatic because the sane ones are too predictable?" She rolled a black go stone between her fingers. "Fine. But when I lose, I want it on record that this was the worst idea you've ever had." The Vexari's reception was everything Elara expected, a masterpiece of condescension. The Grand Strategium's gates loomed before her, carved with reliefs of Dominion victories, entire species kneeling, their strategies broken, their wills shattered. The air smelled of ozone and superiority. "Ah, the human," sneered a Vexari herald, his voice dripping with amusement. "We've prepared a special ranking for you, primitive tier." "You got a category for sore losers too?" The herald's antennae stiffened. "Your bravado is as crude as your species' history. The Dominion has triumphed over chaos for 10,000 cycles. You will be no different." Elara shrugged and stepped inside, her boots clicking against the polished floor. Around her, alien delegates whispered, their many eyes tracking her with a mix of curiosity and disdain. She caught snippets of conversation. How can they even think without a hive mind? At the center of the chamber, Archon Zha'reth awaited, his massive frame draped in a robe woven from the silk of conquered worlds. Dr. Voss, he rumbled, we've studied your kind. Your strategies are emotional, unstable. Zha'reth will purify that weakness. Elara met his gaze, her smile never wavering. Funny, I was just thinking the same thing about you. The chamber fell silent. Then the Vexari laughed, a sound like shattering glass. The tournament would begin tomorrow. And so would their unraveling. The crystalline citadel of the Dominion hummed with a quiet, imperious energy, its walls refracting light into geometric patterns that seemed to whisper order, control, perfection. Elara Voss walked through the grand hall, her boots clicking against the polished floor, an irregular rhythm in a place where even footsteps were meant to conform. The Vexari had assembled the tournament's participants in the Grand Strategium, a cavernous chamber where the ceiling arched into fractal patterns, each line a calculated display of Dominion supremacy. At its center stood the Zha'reth board, a holographic monstrosity of shifting dimensions, its pieces shimmering like captured stars. High strategist Vexar, his forearms folded in smug repose, addressed the gathered delegates. His voice was a blade wrapped in silk. Zha'reth is the pinnacle of strategic thought, he declared. A game of absolute calculation where every variable is accounted for, every outcome predetermined by the purity of logic. His compound eyes flickered toward Elara. It will clarify the minds of those still bound by primitive instincts. A ripple of amusement passed through the Vexari observers. Elara kept her expression neutral, but her fingers twitched, an old habit from her go days when she'd trace imaginary stones on a table's edge. The rules were explained with glacial precision. Zha'reth was chess, but more, a 12-dimensional lattice where pieces moved in mathematically ordained patterns, their paths locked in by centuries of Dominion doctrine. There were no surprises, no ambiguities, only the cold certainty of perfected strategy. Elara listened, but she wasn't just learning the game, she was studying them. The Vexari moved with synchronized grace, their decisions made in councils where dissent was as unthinkable as a misplaced pawn. Their art was symmetrical to the point of sterility, their politics, a series of pre-scripted maneuvers. Even their breathing seemed regulated. And then it clicked. They don't play games, they execute rituals. A junior strategist, Kale, approached her after the briefing. Unlike the others, his carapace bore faint scars, a mark of disgrace. You understand nothing, he said, though his tone lacked the usual venom. This isn't a game you can improvise. Elara tilted her head. Isn't that what strategy is? Adaptation? Kale's mandibles twitched. Adaptation implies flaws. I has D. The Dominion does not make mistakes, she almost laughed. Then why bother playing at all? The first practice match was a farce. Elara sat across from a Vexari prodigy, his antennae quivering with barely contained glee. The spectators loomed like statues, their confidence absolute. She moved a piece. Wrong. A collective shudder ran through the room. The prodigy corrected her with a patronizing flick of his claw. The Zha'reth may only advance in prime-numbered increments, he chided. Ah, Elara said, nodding sagely. Of course. She proceeded to misplay spectacularly, her moves just off enough to be plausible mistakes, yet never quite predictable. The Vexari grew restless. This wasn't how the game was meant to unfold. By the third match, whispers slithered through the crowd. Chaotic, unstable, typical of her species, but Kale watched in silence. And Elara, beneath her performance, was mapping the cracks in their certainty. That night, in her quarters, she unspooled a go board from her travel kit, a simple mat of woven starlight fabric, its grid worn from years of play. She placed a single black stone at Tengen, the center. Balance, influence, patience. The Dominion saw the universe as a puzzle to be solved. She saw it as a board to be reshaped. 19. Jest. The grand arena of the Celestial Dominion was a symphony of arrogance. Light refracted through its diamond-tiered galleries, casting prismatic shadows over the Vexari spectators, their chitinous carapaces polished to a gleam that matched their unshakable confidence. At the center of the chamber, the Zha'reth board hummed with holographic intensity, its three-dimensional lattice pulsing like a living thing. Dr. Elara Voss stepped onto the platform, her bare feet cool against the iridescent floor. The murmurs of the crowd were a physical weight, pressing down with the smug certainty of a species that had never lost. "Observe the human," hissed a Vexari commentator through the arena's resonance channels. "Note the absence of tactical implants. She relies on organic cognition alone. How quaint." Elara's first opponent, strategist Prime Vixis, loomed across the board. His four upper limbs moved with mechanical precision as he activated the opening sequence. "You are permitted the first move, as is customary for inferior species," he intoned, mandibles clicking in amusement. She bowed, just deep enough to be polite, just shallow enough to be insolent, and placed her piece. It was a terrible move. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Vixis' ocular ridges furrowed. "You sacrificed your central nexus so early? This is not how Zha'reth is played." Elara smiled. "Isn't it?" She lost, spectacularly. The next match, she lost again. This time, she abandoned all defensive formations by the third move, her pieces scattered like debris in a solar wind. The Vexari nobles tittered, their amusement vibrating through the chamber's acoustics. "Primitive instincts," one sneered. "They cannot comprehend structured thought." But in the shadows of the observation tier, a single Vexari remained silent. Kyle the Sundered, once a grand tactician himself before his heresy trial, leaned forward. His scarred carapace bore the marks of plasma branding, a punishment for daring to suggest the Dominion's strategies were flawed. His compound eyes tracked Elara's every move, noting the way her mistakes formed peculiar, asymmetrical patterns. That night, in the Citadel's lower archives, Elara ran her fingers over Dominion war records. The holograms flickered as she pulled up battle after battle, each a mirror of Zha'reth's rigid geometries. Flanking maneuvers, decisive strikes, no room for ambiguity. "You're studying us." Kale's voice was like grinding quartz. "Disgraced strategists make poor spies," she said lightly. "And humans make poorer tacticians," he countered, stepping into the light. One of his forelimbs was missing, she noted, severed at the joint, likely by his own kin. Yet here you are, losing with purpose. Elara tapped the hologram of a historic Dominion fleet engagement. "You won this battle because your enemy expected you to attack the supply lines first." It was the logical. "But what if they let you take the supplies?" She zoomed in. "What if they poisoned them, or rigged them to explode, or just walked away?" Kale's antennae twitched. "That would be irrational." "Exactly." She closed the projection. "Your entire civilization is built on the belief that all intelligent beings think like you. That's why you've never lost." A pause. "Until now," the third match began. This time, the crowd was larger, not out of interest, but for the spectacle of watching the human embarrass herself again. High strategist Xerxes himself attended, his carapace adorned with victory sigils. Elara took her seat. Vixis initiated the standard opening. She placed her piece outside the established lattice. The arena's hum died instantly. "That is not a valid position," Vixis snapped. "Says who?" Elara asked. "Says the rules." She tilted her head. "Funny, I don't remember agreeing to them." A murmur spread through the crowd. Kale, watching from the stands, felt something alien stir in his thorax. Vixis hesitated, then countered, forced to adapt. But with every move, Elara's pieces encroached in ways that defied Zha'reth's logic. She wasn't attacking. She wasn't defending. She was weaving, her formations fluid, her influence spreading like ink in water. By the 20th move, Vix's limbs trembled. "This is not Zha'reth." Elara placed another piece. "No, it's better." The match ended in stalemate, a concept so foreign to the Vexari that the adjudicators required an hour to deliberate. When they declared it a non-victory, the crowd erupted in outrage. But as Elara walked away, she caught Kale's gaze across the chamber. He bowed, just deep enough to be polite, just shallow enough to be treason. The chamber hummed with the low, discordant murmur of 1,000 Vexari voices, some mocking, others uneasy. Elara Voss sat motionless at the obsidian game table, her fingers resting lightly on the edge as if waiting for a breeze to guide her next move. Across from her, high strategist Vexthal loomed, his 4 opalescent eyes narrowed in predatory amusement. His mandibles twitched in what passed for a smirk among the Vexari. "Your persistence is entertaining, human," Vexthal intoned, his voice like grinding tectonic plates. "But this farce ends now. Submit, and your species may yet retain its place among our vassals." Elara exhaled, slow and deliberate. The air in the Dominion's grand arena was thick with the scent of ionized metal and something faintly floral, an alien perfume meant to soothe the Vexaris' delicate senses. It made her want to sneeze. "Funny," she said, picking up a piece, not the jagged, hierarchical Zha'reth commander the Vexari favored, but a smooth, unmarked stone from the edge of the board. "I was about to say the same thing to you." She placed the stone, not in the center of a calculated offensive, not in defense of a key position, but here, on an empty intersection far from the battle lines the Vexari had drawn in their minds. A ripple of confusion passed through the spectators. The grand adjudicator's frills flared crimson. Irregular placement. The human disregards the sacred geometries. Vexthal's claws flexed against the table. "Explain this, aberration." Elara leaned back. "You keep playing to capture, to conquer, but the board isn't just territory, it's influence." Another stone. Another seemingly nonsensical placement. The Vexari champion hesitated. His entire culture had been built on the axiom that every conflict had a correct move, a singular, optimal path to victory. But Elara's play was fluid, shifting, alive. She wasn't attacking his pieces, she was weaving a net. In the stands, Kale, the disgraced strategist, stiffened. His secondary eyes, the ones Vexari used for peripheral calculation, darted across the board. He saw it before the others, the pattern. Not the rigid branching logic of Zha'reth, but something older, something human. "Go," he murmured. The word slipped out before he could stop it. A nearby magistrate hissed, "What did you say?" Kale didn't answer. He was too busy watching Elara sacrifice 3 high-value pieces in succession, not out of desperation, but with the serene certainty of a gardener pruning a vine. Vexthal's confidence wavered. He countered, seizing the offered pieces, but with each capture, Elara's remaining stones gained power. The human wasn't playing the board. She was playing him. "You're not even trying to win," the high strategist snarled. Elara smiled. Trying to change the game. A gasp tore through the crowd as she placed her next stone directly into what the Vexari considered neutral space, useless, wasteful, until the connections flared to life. Like constellations aligning, the scattered stones suddenly formed a lattice of control, hemming in Vexthal's forces without a single direct confrontation. The Dominion's champion stared, his tactical sub-processors overloading as they scrambled to categorize a strategy with no precedent in their databases. "This is not Zha'reth!" the Grand Adjudicator shrieked. "No," Elara agreed. "It's better." Kale stood abruptly. The movement drew eyes in suspicion, but he didn't care. For the first time in his life, he was seeing possibility where there had only been dogma. Vexthal's claws slammed down, fracturing the obsidian table. "Enough! You violate the sanctity of the rules?" Elara interrupted. "Funny, I read them. They never said I had to play your way." Then, from the back of the chamber, a single, hesitant click of Vexari applause. "KL, The sound was treason, it was hope, and as Elara placed her final stone, the Dominion's perfect, unshakable certainty cracked like glass. The chamber was a cathedral of silence. Elara's last stone sat on the obsidian board like a declaration of war. The Vexari high strategist, his carapace gleaming under the triple sun's light, had not moved in 17 minutes. His mandibles twitched, an involuntary tell, one Kale had warned her about. The moment they stop understanding, they start panicking. And oh, how they panic now. A junior tactician dared to murmur, "The pattern, it doesn't resolve." Another hissed back, "It's not a pattern, it's chaos?" Elara leaned back in her seat, fingers steepled. "No. It's go." The word meant nothing to them. That was the point. Kale stepped forward, his carapace dulled by years of disgrace, but now alight with something dangerous. "She isn't playing Zha'reth," he announced, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Where the board isn't conquered, it's influenced." The high strategist's claws scraped the table. "This is an abomination, a violation of what?" Elara's smile was a scalpel. "Your rules, your certainty?" She gestured to the board. "Look again. Every move I lost was a sacrifice. Every retreat was a feint. You saw disorder, I saw shape." The strategist's compound eyes flickered. For the first time in his millennia of existence, he was afraid. News spread like a virus through the crystalline spires of the Dominion. By nightfall, the lower castes, those bound by the rigid hierarchies of Zha'reth logic, were murmuring in the glow of bioluminescent streets. "They say the human doesn't even think in straight lines. They say the grand strategist trembled." In the markets, a Cathoran merchant, a species once conquered for their illogical barter systems, openly laughed. "Told you, you can't tax ambiguity." The Dominion's enforcers moved to silence him. Kyle found Elara on the Citadel's highest balcony, her silhouette framed by the swirling nebula beyond. "You've done it," he said, his voice raw. "They're questioning. Do you know how long it's been since anyone dared?" She didn't turn. How long? Below them, the planet thrummed with unrest. A Vexari philosopher, exiled years ago for irrational theorems, had been dragged back into the academies. A group of young tacticians were experimenting with go stones in hidden courtyards. And the high strategist had locked himself in the Grand Archive, poring over every record of human history, searching for the flaw in their thinking. There wasn't one. That was the beauty of it. The final straw came when a lowly scribe, tasked with recording Elara's matches, dared to speak in council. "What if," he stammered, "what if Zha'reth isn't the pinnacle? What if it's just one way?" The chamber erupted. Traditionalists screamed. Reformers, newly emboldened, countered. The high strategist, his carapace dull with stress, tried to restore order, but order was the problem. Elara watched from the shadows, Kale at her side. "They'll kill him for that," he muttered. "Maybe," she said, "but you can't unhear an idea." And then, the unthinkable, the scribe wasn't executed. The council debated. The Dominion's foundation, built on the absolute certainty of their superiority, cracked wider. As dawn broke, Kale brought Elara a message. The high strategist demanded a final match. "Hell cheat," Kale warned. "Hell change the rules." Elara folded the missive into a paper crane, a human habit that made the Vexari flinch. "Good," she said. "That means he's learning." Outside, the first riots began. The grand hall of the Dominion's crystalline citadel was silent, save for the hum of the atmospheric processors, those delicate machines that scrubbed the air of anything unseemly, anything unpredictable. The high strategist sat across from Elara, his 4 obsidian eyes reflecting the holographic Zha'reth board between them. His mandibles twitched in what might have been amusement or perhaps irritation. It was hard to tell with the Vexari. Their emotions were as rigidly structured as their games. "You have no king." Elara smiled, her fingers hovering over a smooth black stone, one of the gold pieces she had smuggled into the match. "Neither do you," the spectators murmured. The Dominion's elite, draped in robes woven from the silk of conquered worlds, shifted uncomfortably. They had come expecting a spectacle, a final humiliating defeat of the upstart human. Instead, they found themselves unsettled by the way Elara moved, as if she were playing an entirely different game. The high strategist made his opening move, a textbook Zha'reth gambit designed to dominate the center. Elara responded by placing her stone outside the board's traditional boundaries. A gasp rippled through the chamber. "That is not a legal move," the strategist hissed. "Says who?" Elara tilted her head. "Your rules assume the board is finite. Mine don't." KL, watching from the shadows, suppressed a shudder. He had spent centuries mastering Zha'reth, only to realize now that its perfection was a cage. Elara's stones sprawled outward, ignoring lines of attack, ignoring control. They didn't seek to capture, they sought to influence. The strategist's claws tapped impatiently. "You cannot win by refusing to engage. Who said I was refusing?" Elara placed another stone, this one in a quadrant the Vexari considered irrelevant. The board flickered. The Dominion's holographic system, designed to enforce strict move validation, stuttered. It had no protocol for this. By the 20th move, the strategist's confidence had curdled into something darker. His pieces advanced in flawless formation, but Elara's stones weakened them simply by existing nearby. She sacrificed entire groups without hesitation, and each loss somehow left her stronger. "This is nonsense," the strategist snapped. "You are not even playing." "Funny," Elara mused. "I was about to say the same to you." A murmur spread through the crowd. Kyle stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension. "She's right. Zha'reth is a game of conquest. But go? Zha'reth. It's a game of possibility." The strategist's eyes narrowed. "Traitor, observer," Kale corrected. "You assumed the universe followed your rules. It never did." Outside, the riots grew louder. The Dominion's lower castes, long suppressed under the weight of absolute hierarchy, had begun to whisper, to question if a human could dismantle their greatest game without even trying to win. What else had they been wrong about? The strategist lunged for checkmate, his pieces converging in a killing blow. Elara didn't block. She didn't retreat. She placed a single white stone in an empty corner. The holographic board shattered, not from force, from paradox. The system could not compute a game where victory wasn't the point, where influence mattered more than territory, where sacrifice was strength. The strategist recoiled as if struck. This is not strategy." "No," Elara agreed, standing. "It's wisdom." Silence. Then, a sound the Dominion had never heard before. It started with Kale, then spread to the other spectators, to the guards, to the citizens watching on the feeds. The Vexari had spent millennia believing they were masters of the universe. Now they weren't even masters of a game. The Dominion did not fall that day. Not in the way humans understood such things, but something far more dangerous happened. They doubted. Elara left the citadel without fanfare. KL followed, his once pristine robes traded for simpler garments. "What now?" he asked. She glanced at the sky, where the 3 purple suns cast long shadows over the Empire's gleaming spires. Now? They learned to play. And as the first cracks in the Dominion's certainty spread, the galaxy held its breath. Because the most dangerous move of all is the one you don't see coming? Years later, the Dominion's spires still gleamed under their triple suns, but the Empire was no longer the same. Elara's match had become legend. Not because she had won, but because she had changed the board. The Vexari, once certain of their supremacy, now studied go with the reverence of acolytes. Their fleets moved differently. Their politics bent where they had once broken. Kale found her on a backwater world, beneath a sky streaked with unfamiliar stars. She was teaching a group of children, human, Vexari, others, how to place stones on a worn wooden grid. Still playing? He asked. Elara smiled. Always. The Dominion had expected checkmate, but humanity? They played the long game.